Good morning and welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. This is Patrick, and I have Svetlana with me, who's going to be doing one of our demos, or two of them. Welcome to our webinars. Great to have you here again. Before we get started, I want to do a quick poll and see how many of you saw this announcement from Microsoft last week, or the week before. Actually, it was 3 weeks ago. So we'll launch this poll here, and we've got three options for you. Either you didn't see it, and you just love us, you're here in the webinar, or option two, yeah, you saw it, no big deal. A lot of unnecessary concern and worry out there. And then option three is, well, maybe you are a little concerned and that's why you're here. So we'll run this poll a few more seconds here. It looks like most of you did not see it. So I should thank you all for being such devoted webinar attendees. The webinar today was inspired by the MS Inspire announcement, or MS Ignite announcement, that the Flow and Power Apps pricing model was going to change. Okay, I'm going to shut down the poll here. 85% of you say that you did not see this announcement. And I'm going to close the poll, and you should see my screen again. But Svetlana, can you confirm that my screen is showing? We are recording.
So, Patrick, there is the screen with the new licensing option still overlaying.
Great. Thanks. So you see the regular screen now, right?
Yes.
So just to give some context, before we switch to that slide, let me share with you one more screen here, and that is the current Flow pricing. So this webinar today is about Flow. And we had this inspiration after seeing this announcement that, well, gee, maybe it's going to affect our pricing. Microsoft changed the pricing last year, and you'll see from this slide in November of last year, they announced the Flow pricing was changing along with Power Apps. And there was quite a lot of discussion among the partner community. We were on phone calls with Microsoft talking about this stuff, and they updated the discussion I think it was in like December. They sent out some clarifications. The pricing started in February. We have these two plans now. If we switch back to the presentation, or the web view, this is live. There's three plans. There's the free plan that you get in 365 E3 or Dynamics, and then there's these two additional plans. And I don't know if many of you have them or not, but if you do, you want to pay careful attention to this webinar. And if you don't, you still may want to pay attention, because there is some confusion out there regarding what the price increase is going to be. And especially since Microsoft has changed things quite a bit over the last year. So, well, don't be confused. You know, I mean, if you're Alfred Newman, if you know who this guy is, you're probably, dying because the magazine won't be renewed. But you don't need to worry, because the short answer to the worry here is probably doesn't affect you because you're not using premium flows. What's a premium flow? It's something that has a premium data connector. So, and we'll talk more about that in a second. I mean, of the 20 flows that Qdabra uses, we only have one or maybe two, actually two, that have premium data connectors. So we're guessing that maybe 5–10% of your flows will be premium. And for those, we have a solution for you, and that's the topic of today's webinar. So we're going to show a couple demos. In fact, without any further ado, I'm going to turn the presenting over to Svetlana, and she's going to do a very quick demo to show you how to take a flow and convert it into a logic app. And then we're going to talk about why that might be a good idea. And let's see, Daniel Murphy's got a question, but I think we're okay, right, Daniel? Because you can see my screen hopefully now. I think everyone's in here, and I'm going to make Svetlana the presenter. Svetlana has been with us for, was it 3 months now, Svetlana? We're really happy that you came aboard. And Svetlana brings to Qdabra a lot of SharePoint expertise, especially managing the cloud tenants and doing migrations, and also Flow, and obviously all of the new features in Microsoft. So Svetlana, do you want to do a quick demo. Are you ready?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I am here on my flows. I'm in SharePoint environment, and I go to flows, and I go to my flows, and probably lots of people have different flows. They're working with them. And I will show you what is the flow look like. So when a new item is created in SharePoint, it gets my Outlook Office 365 profile, and it sends an email. So there are very simple steps. They're just 3 points that it was created out of a template. And when I go back to the edit of this flow, I just confirm that the flow runs successfully. So so my settings are okay. I don't have any issues with my flow. And then I click export. And on the export options, I have logic apps. So you have a package zip that you can export to flow and import from another flow, you can create another flow out of it, or you can export to a logic apps. And I'm going to click logic apps, and it saves it to my downloads. So here it's my downloads. I have lots of downloads because when I was preparing for the demo, but here it is, and I can drag it here so I can better organize it. And this is my folders of exported logic apps. Now I will switch to a different place, and it's my development environment, because I want to test the flows, how they work in my logic apps before I put it in production. So I now switch to Azure services. Patrick, do you see my other screen for the Azure services?
Yep.
Okay. So here is a very new environment, nothing to do with Office 365, but it's still user-friendly. It's not that complicated to understand, and I'm not a developer. I'm just an IT pro. I can read the code, I can just see what's going on there, but I cannot code at all. So now I want to feel comfortable of creating a new flow, a new workflow using logic apps. And I create a resource, and I start typing templates, and it puts template deploy using custom templates, and I hit create. And from here, I need to click build your own template from editor, and I load the file. So here, the way I saved it, if I use this one, send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is created, it will error out, and I will show you what was the error. I'm not going to spend much time of deploying something that fails, because the spacing here brings errors. That's why you need to rename your exports with something that doesn't have spaces in between. So I have this one that is with a space, without a space. I click open, and I click save. Because I'm subscribed in my development environment as pay as you go, and I have other flows, other logic apps that I have created. I have already a resource group that I maintain easy, and I know what I have there, and I select this resource group. But if I didn't have it, I can type anything there. It is just doesn't have to have any spaces. And I create the logic app name. Again, without any spaces. Logic app location, resource group location. And I have to purchase something, so I have to agree on some purchase. And I wasn't sure that what I'm purchasing, but I'm okay doing it. Please fix the error before you're closing. Sorry.
It wouldn't be a demo if there wasn't some kind of an error.
So there was not.
Just did this. Yeah, you just did this.
I agree. I didn't agree on their agreement. Sorry. Yeah, so you need to agree with the agreement. And then the deployment is in progress.
So if you're just joining, what Svetlana is currently demoing is taking a flow and quickly converting it into a logic app. Really is quick. It's like 3 or 4 minutes. You can export and import. There are a few things you need to make sure you pay attention to. Spaces. Don't have spaces in your name, and then you won't have errors. And also you need to agree to pay Microsoft. Now, how long does this usually take? This is pretty quick, right?
It's 1 minute, yeah, 1 or 2 minutes.
And once this finishes, you're going to go into the list and you're going to add a new item and watch the email come through, right?
Yeah, I can, because I did for the test run yesterday, I can just use the one that it was created. I'm sure it will be successful. So for
can we do the one? Let's do the one that you created right now, just to make it a real demo.
Okay.
Living on the edge here, because we all things work. It's certainly taking more time than it was when we demoed it yesterday to deploy it. That's kind of interesting. Let's do this. Let's actually come back to this. I'm going to just go through a few slides really quickly, and then we'll come back and we'll test your demo. But that's how easy it is to deploy it to Logic Apps. Let's just quickly switch back and talk about a few slides while we're waiting for the deployment to finish. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great. So while we're waiting for the deployment to finish, we'll come back to that demo in just a second. But let's talk a little bit about why you would want to move to Logic Apps. So obviously, this is what Svetlana just did. She just exported a flow to JSON. She created a new Logic app from a template. She imported that file, that JSON file. She loaded it, and then she deployed it, and she's going to run the flow, and that's the final step. Now, this flow that we showed is so simple, it's not really a candidate for converting because it doesn't really have any premium connectors. So for this example, there's no need to convert it to Logic Apps because it doesn't have premium. It'll work just fine even after the pricing changes, even if you don't grandfather in, because there's no premium connectors. So why would you want to convert to Logic Apps? Well, our current understanding, and we're 90% sure, is that Microsoft has said on their websites that the free stuff will continue. So this plan on the left here that you see, the 2,000 runs per month is aggregated across all your users, 5 minutes frequency, that's going to continue. I mean, you're going to still have, if you have 365 or Dynamics, so for example, an E3 license, all of those flows that don't require premium connectors will not be affected. That's my current understanding. And this has been a bit confusing for people because of the way Microsoft is wording it. So we're really only talking about these two things on the right, the Flow Plan 1, Flow Plan 2. So you'll want to check your licensing and see if you have these, because if you do, then you may be a candidate. The other candidates out there may be people who are have some free trial, and they're not realizing that they're using premium connectors. They don't have P1. They're using the free trial, which will expire soon. So when you look at the licensing, you do want to check both of those things out. We actually have a person who created a premium flow, and she was able to do it just fine because she had a trial. So sometimes these trials can last a long time. Here's how Microsoft announces it. This is a slide from the MS Ignite conference. They have the two paid plans on the left. So flow per user, flow per process, these are the two new plans. They're trying to simplify it. And it does make a lot of sense. It is a simplification. But the problem is that they should have put the free thing on the left just to be consistent and said, look, for most of you, 90% of your flows are not going to be affected because they don't use premium connectors. That's what I would have done to make it clear, not to freak people out. So for those premium connectors, let's look at two sort of examples. So let's two companies, right? So we've got Qdabra here in the lower left quadrant. We've got less than 20 users, about 20 flows. At least two of them are premium. We're only using one of the premium. Okay. So, and then you've got the mythical. We're going to use one of the companies that's been a long time customer of ours, Mississippi Valley Regional Blood Center. This is their logo, and I don't know if Misty's on the call or not, but I'm guessing that they have about 1,000 users, about 100 flows, maybe more. But let's just say 1,000 and 100. And let's just say, for the purpose of this comparison, that about, like us, about 10% of them are using a premium connector. So a premium connector would be something like MailChimp. In fact, you can go to your flow and you can quickly check to see if you have a premium connector. You can, of course, there's no way for you to report on it and tell exactly what's premium, but you can go into Flow and you can type in, whatever your connector is, and you can search for it, and it will tell you premium. And that's your indication that, oh, okay, I actually need a P1 or a P2 for that flow. Or in the new model, I need to actually have a license that's going to replace the P1 or P2, or make a decision to grandfather in. Now, the grandfathering is a bit confusing. I'm not going to really talk about that, but Microsoft has basically said that they're going to allow you to keep your existing plans as long as you grandfather them in between October 1st and the end of March. So you got 6 months to grandfather them in. Now, it's not clear what happens when they renew after that, because after March 31st, there won't be any of these P1, P2 plans anymore available. But they are giving you an option to grandfather in, and they've been doing this in the past when they changed things. They made sure that it didn't impact you. So here's the impact if we don't grandfather in those flows, and we wait until April 1st, and we're like, oh, okay, we didn't grandfather in, so we need to go with one of these new models. Now, what's surprising about these two different new models, these two different per user per process, is that there's a minimum. The minimum number of users is 20, and that's 20 times $15. So that's $300 here. So the minimum we have to pay to use any premium connectors for a flow, even if it's just one flow, one user, is $300. Conversely, we can also pay per process. So if we had 5 or more processes, we could buy this plan, and this would give us unlimited users for those 5 processes. So this doesn't work for us. It would be better to go with the per user plan here. But for something like the mythical Mississippi Valley Regional Blood Center numbers, which I've used here, it's probably better to go with the per user or some kind of a hybrid. So that's what you see on the far right here is the hybrid. So they've mixed and matched because they don't have a minimum. They've exceeded beyond the minimum. They have 1,000 users. 10% of them need the flows. That's $1,500. If they have 10% of the processes, 100 different flows, 10% of those are required, then that's $100 per process, $1,000, right? 10 times 100. But there might be some hybrid in between. So they might be able to say, go with one of these plans here, like the $500 one, and get 5 processes. And then they might have some users, like let's say they had 5% of their users only needed the, that they needed some other processes. So they could then do kind of a mixture. And that's what we put here for this last column, is some kind of a mixture, which I'm guessing is totally possible because you can mix and match these two different licensing plans, just like you can anything. Now, before we go to that slide, let's come back to Svetlana and just see how the demo went. Are you ready, Svetlana? Is it deployed?
I am ready.
Great.
Yeah, it deployed already.
Awesome. Okay, let me make you presenter again here, and we'll take a look at that. We'll walk through that Azure. Okay.
So here, can you see?
Yeah, can you go walk us through it?
Yes, let me make it a little bit bigger. It doesn't change the size, sorry. So I'm sorry that it's a little bit smaller size, but I cannot. So I'm going to the resource group. So it's already, that new flow is there. I'm going to the resource group, and this is the one that I just created, SharePoint item. And if I go on edit, you will see the flow. It's exactly the same that I exported, with the only difference here is that my previous flow didn't have anything to do with an interval, because it was triggered by Office 365 SharePoint item, and flow was monitoring all the time what is happening in my SharePoint list, while here this logic app needs to go every 5 minutes to check whether there is
It's
any
interesting
change.
that it automatically chose the 5-minute interval. That sort of assumes that it shows that it detected that it was a free flow. It wasn't one of these more advanced flows, right? I mean, it chose
Yes.
that for you. You didn't specify 5. It just
No, I didn't specify anything. By default, it knows that in SharePoint, this is the default interval. That's why, because if you go to their pricing, the current pricing for free Office 365 E3 licensing, it triggers every 5 minutes. So it's the same time interval.
Can you show them the flow working now in Logic Apps?
Mm-hmm.
You have to enable it first, right?
Yeah. So I go here and I need to enable it. Here you enable it because it's usually disabled, and I would advise everyone when they try and test it to disable it, because it might run and you can just don't know when it's going to trigger some amounts, but it's so minimal. I will show you how much it costs for me. So I'm running the trigger now. When a new item is created and successfully checks the trigger, now I need to go to my list. I'm adding a new item here. I'm selecting. This is a list that I created for test purposes as SharePoint administrator, my admin tasks. And if I go back here to the flow, successfully check the trigger.
Okay.
So it was, so I run it and it was there. So let me rerun it again just in case.
It should automatically say it succeeded, right? If it it found
Successfully check the trigger. Let me go to see whether my email arrived.
Won't it give us some kind of indication that it
Yeah, it should.
It should, yeah.
So here, I just received it.
Oh, great.
828. So this is the new item that was added.
Now, if you go into the go back to Logic Apps and let's just see if we can find the history of the running there. Is there some place to trigger history? Can you go down to that? Was that interesting?
Yes, this is the one. Count 2 actions. So it tells you that there were 2 actions on this flow. And let's go to SharePoint item, and there was see trigger history here. This is what happened. It was fired and it was successful.
And if you click on that one that was fired, do you get more details? Yep. Okay, cool. Wonderful. Okay, great. Thanks. I'm going to switch back to our slides real quick. This is our first demo, and we have one more demo possibly here at the end using a premium connector. And so thanks, Phil. That worked really well. We have a couple questions. Maybe we should answer those questions first. So Bob's got a question. Sorry, Bob, we didn't see this earlier. Why convert to Logic Apps? What was the cost? Right, so we're going to talk about that in just a second here. And then, Sandra, you got a question for the free version and 2,000 runs per month. Is that per tenant or user? That's per user. So they're aggregated. So if you have 20 people in your organization, you end up with 40,000 runs per month. And you can see these. You can go into, actually, because your question is so interesting, I'm going to come back to it in a second and show you where you can go see how many flows have run. Okay, Misty's here. Great, Misty. Sorry, we didn't ask you if we could use the mythical data set from your organization. I just chose your organization because I know you have a lot of processes, and I figured that you'd be okay with that. But let us know if that's not the case, and we will scrub it from the video. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we should ask you, Misty, if the numbers we were using were actually legitimate. And we were guessing that you had over 1,000 users of your SharePoint tenant, and that you had potentially around 100 flows. And maybe you can tell us in your chat or something whether you think that. And I might even make you just a speaker here. But we're running out of time. So let me actually just go to the meat of this. So how much did it cost? So this is a surprising thing. If you do the math on this, which Svetlana did, it is these flows in Logic Apps. Logic Apps is a usage-based model. So up until now, you know, SharePoint Tenant Online, those free plans were usage-based, and you know, 2,000 runs per month, and you aggregate all the runs across, and that's per user. You aggregate all those users' runs across the whole organization. So it's very hard to exceed that amount. And Microsoft is changing it to be per user and per process, and there's some reasons for that. But you could, if you have a premium connector, move it to Logic Apps. It's very simple. You saw how Svetlana did that, and the cost is just astoundingly different. So the action cost is like, oh, I mean, it's so small. So here is the one that she just ran. She had 3 actions. This is a little bit hard. I apologize for all the numbers here. But if you do the math, there's if you run it, you don't have to run it every 5 minutes. But if you stick with the free version, so you're completely parity with the SharePoint frequency, then you'd have 288 runs a day times 3. Potentially the maximum cost would be $4.15 for that entire month, right? Which is really cheap. If you have a more complex flow, like let's say you have 50 actions or 250, well, it's going to be more money, but we're not talking about a whole lot here, right? If you had a really complex flow and you run it in Logic Apps, you know, maybe, and you wouldn't run it quite this frequently. You might, I mean, maybe you would. Maybe you'd run it every second to trigger it, but maybe it wouldn't be successful, so it wouldn't charge you. So I think that this is on the high side. Now, having said that, there are these things called enterprise connectors. In you know, if you have the need to connect to SAP or one of these line of business applications, you will need an enterprise connectors, and the pricing for those is different. But still, the pricing is significantly lower cost than what you would pay if you were Qdabra and you had that $300 a month minimum. In fact, it's so small that you can't even see the line here where it shows Logic Apps. In the made-up example for MVRBC, Mississippi Valley Regional Blood Center, by the way, you should give blood. They're low right now. Go give blood, especially if you have type O, which is my type. I'm going to give blood today, Misty. So thanks for allowing us to use your example here. If you're Mississippi Valley Regional Blood Center, you could potentially also see a significant savings. Now, this is all based on the assumption that you have premium flows, because if you don't have a premium flow, you don't care. And that's really where we come to the second demo. I think we'll come back to this demo. I do want to just talk about a few more things here before we show this demo, and that is the difference between usage. So as Svetlana mentioned, Microsoft Flow, you're a power user. In Azure Logic Apps, you know, the target audience is going to be more IT pro developer. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. It's so easy to do. With the implementation, you know, Logic Apps is actually the foundation. Flow is built on top of Logic Apps, but there are some differences. So specifically, if you have buttons, you know, Flow buttons, you have to set up a frequency trigger to check it with Logic Apps. There are some things that require custom connectors for Azure Logic Apps, for example, Power Apps. But in general, like SharePoint lists, all those things are standard, and you don't have to do any enterprise connectors for those. So that keeps the cost down. When you're monitoring these things, let me just quickly go to answer Sandra's question. Sandra, it's great to have you back in our webinars. I'm going to just quickly go to the admin center here. So I'm in Flow. If you go to Admin Center in Flow, there's an option to export all of your current flows, and it'll give you usage data. So if for Qdabra, we go in here and we look at quotas, and we download all of the data. Actually, it says 12 flow runs, so I don't have access to, I guess we're running 12 flows, not it's less than 20 or so. And if we download the data, you'll see an Excel file with all of the, and you can see there, we have 11 users, so 22,000 is our flow runs, and that's aggregated. So if I export this to Excel, they're going to provide a really nice, I'm just going to drag this over if I can. It gives you a really nice little example. So our timesheet form is the one that runs the most. And you can aggregate these and you can see that we're well below the limit, 724 out of 22,000. So we don't need to worry too much about that. There are some references here. There are additional costs. So if you have somebody who can do this, then you don't need to hire a developer, but you may feel uncomfortable doing it, and certainly Qdabra would help you, and it would be very low cost, to do this migration for your flows. You do have to prepare an Azure environment, but that's pretty easy too. So there's not really a whole lot of a bar or a cost to doing this. Let's take some quick questions, and then if we have time, we'll come back and do the MailChimp demo, which has a premium data connection. So Misty's saying that we do have, you have about 1,000 employees. That's good. I guessed that right. And yeah, right. Everyone should give blood today. So anyone have questions on our quick presentation? I want to make you aware of one little thing. While you're thinking about something to ask us, we have a new data sheet out for Forms Viewer. So Forms Viewer is our InfoPath migration option. If you've got InfoPath forms you need to replace, we've made a lot of progress on putting together a replacement option over the last 3 or 4 years, and that's called Forms Viewer. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I know a lot of you on the call are using Forms Viewer, but Forms Viewer is the only option out there today that allows you to actually migrate your forms or upgrade them in place. And we've got a new data sheet we just added to our details page here that I just want to make you aware of. And it's a data sheet we've put a little bit of effort in last week to creating this. It kind of talks through these scenarios. We are the only app out there that takes your existing form template, retains backward compatibility, but also extends them so you don't have to use InfoPath anymore, and you can get new features. We've been around for almost 16 years now. September 15th is our anniversary date. And we've got some pricing information here. It's basically going to be at least an order of magnitude or more lower cost than any other option out there, because you don't have to worry about migration costs. The XML format's preserved. You don't have to retrain your staff. And you get all these new features. So like PDF printing. You could replace a tool you're using for PDF printing with Forms Viewer, and it would be for free, right? And so we did a little comparison at the bottom here where we looked at different options, and we have a little diagram slide at the bottom. So we have 4 different deployment modes. Online, which is the default. You can do online with your private instance, or you can host it all on your private client, and you can even do it without SharePoint. So you don't need SharePoint necessarily for it. So that's my quick spiel. Any questions for us? I'm just looking at our chat window. I want to thank you all for being here today. And just a quick show of hands, does anyone want to see that demo with the premium connector? I'm just going to take a quick look at our attendees here. And it looks like we don't have, actually, Mark and Mark Sterling, the Marks. And we've got 2 people that want to see the new demo. So let's go ahead and do that. For the rest of you, thank you for joining. We hope you can come back here again next week or the following week. And happy August. So we're going to switch to you, Svetlana, and we're going to do this second demo.
Yes, sir. Yes. I will be happy to share the second demo, and I wanted to share more screens of how you can see the cost. So with the second demo.
I'm actually trying to make you the presenter again. There we go.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
So this is another, there is an echo somehow. I don't know how it's happening. I'm sure that I don't have other microphones, but is it okay now, my voice? Because I was hearing an echo.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, so there is a flow in our SharePoint environment that where is the MailChimp list, and we all know that, as Patrick showed you, that it's a premium action that is there, and it from MailChimp, when somebody has added item to the list, it creates a new item to SharePoint. So it's a pretty standard and pretty simple flow. And I do the same. I export to Logic Apps template. It goes to my computer. And now it's ready. I need to rename it, and I have it already downloaded because, as I mentioned, it's the same, exactly the same MailChimp to SharePoint, but renamed with a better word naming convention. Now I will go to redeploy it again, to deploy a new instance from it. So I go to Home, and I put a new resource. I start template, and I create. Go from your. I'm repeating the same steps that I did from the previous.
I'm just curious, Philana, can you load the one with the spaces? Because I think the spaces are only an issue for the name. Is that the MailChimp one? That's not the MailChimp one. Go get the MailChimp one.
Yeah,
because I don't think that is, the spaces are okay here because you're just loading the data in. I think the spaces only matter when you name it right here.
Subscription resource group. This is the one, Logic App name. Name. Let's try this way.
Don't forget to agree to pay Microsoft everything you own.
And let's wait for its deployment. So it took more than before from the previous one. I hope this one will work faster.
Let me switch and just add a new MailChimp item so we can trigger it. Is that cool? Okay.
But it needs to first be deployed before it triggers.
Okay, so I need to wait?
Yes, please.
Well,
but while we are waiting...
Yeah, while we're waiting, let me switch back to my screen and show people on my MailChimp screen. Okay, so I've got MailChimp here. Where is it? I've got you already set up to add you to our newsletter, Svetlana, and I just have to hit the subscribe button. So let me know when you're ready.
Go. So it was successful.
Okay, so I'm running it.
Yeah, go for resource group. Give me a second to enable it first.
I just ran it. So let's go back to your screen. Hold on.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Great. I can see your screen.
Yep. So I just MailChimp name. This was the one that I just created. The deployment was successful. Let me edit it. Here I want to show you again that it triggers every minute. This is because it's a premium. It's not the SharePoint one.
That's really interesting that it automatically detects that. That's crazy.
And I wanted to show you something else here. That if I add an action and I select MailChimp, it is a standard. It's not enterprise. Even though it was premium in Office 365, here it's the cheapest version, which is standard version.
That's good.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to share more information about that.
Did it run? Can you go back to the previous screen?
Yes, let me discard that. Yeah. Let me discard this change. I will save it. Go back to MailChimp name. I need to enable it.
Oh, but that's why we didn't run it. We didn't. Okay, that's good. That's good. So you're running it.
And I'm running a trigger. So maybe now you can do the MailChimp list.
There it is. There it is on the right. So if you go to trigger history, what does it show now? Does it show that it actually added you?
Trigger history. Skip. So it's still waiting something.
Waiting for something to change. Okay. Well, that's good. I'm pretty sure that it will add you, because I think that the last step for the MailChimp was to copy that person to the list, right? So if we go to the SharePoint list, do you see?
Let me show you. So yesterday when we tested, it showed that it added.
It just worked right there at the bottom.
It just worked, yes.
843, okay, great.
Yes, this is the one. And can I just share one last?
Maybe it was running the previous version, because it should have shown it in Logic Apps. If you go to the other one you provisioned, is there
It was disabled.
Okay, good.
It was disabled. I make sure that I disable everything, but let me show you something else really cool. So from cost management, I go to analyze cloud cost, open cost analysis. Come on. Here is high cost. I know how much I have to pay. It's 40 cents for the, so here I paid 40 cents since the beginning of the month while I was testing.
But still, it's much less expensive, even in Canadian dollars, than what we had.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, that's wonderful. I'm really glad we were able to do that second demo. And we'll get this webinar videotaped, and actually we've got it recorded, so we're not going to do videotape. What am I talking about? I'm not quite awake yet, need more coffee. We'll get it uploaded to YouTube, and I want to thank you again for being here today. Next week we have a bunch of different topics. We're doing a Power App discussion next week. I think Hillary is doing the webinar. I don't remember the exact name, but if you're a Hillary fan, please don't hesitate to join us next week. Thanks again for being here. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Misty.
Bye.